Hello, this is Dr. Stanley Lang. Welcome to this broadcast, and the topic is the ketogenic diet and how to do it in a healthy way, and particularly two topics: getting started with it, and a particular way of monitoring your progress. So there's a lot of different ideas on both of these different issues of how to get started with the ketogenic diet and how you should monitor your progress, or how you should monitor if you're where you should be in terms of the idea of being in ketosis. So first, a brief definition. The ketogenic diet refers to eating in a way where you are, in a sustained way, forcing your body to go into a kind of chemistry or metabolism that would happen if you were fasting. And what happens when you fast is that you run out of stored sugar, known as glycogen, that's stored in your liver. And it's also stored in the muscles, but the muscles don't really contribute their glycogen to the overall body's needs. The glycogen in the liver is pretty much the storehouse for the rest of the body, besides the muscles. And when you fast, you run out of these glycogen stores in 2 to 3 days, depending on your activity levels. Well, the ketogenic diet forces the body to do that same thing. And when it runs out of glycogen stores, it forces the body to start using fat for fuel. And that fat as fuel creates a bunch of what are called ketones. So ketones become the main fuel for the body instead of glucose. Now, during the process of creating ketones, the body does make some glucose because some of the tissue in the body is what we call glucose dependent. And surprisingly, the liver is one of those organs. So it has to make some sugar for itself, which it does when it breaks down fat. But there's not enough sugar to run the whole body, which is what keeps the body in ketosis. So eating in a way so that you stay in that state is what the ketogenic diet is all about. Now, there's a lot of really good resources out there, different kind of versions of the ketogenic diet, which I'm not going to go over, just to say that they're there. Some of them are pretty good. Some of them are not so good. All of them have some issues, in my opinion, that don't emphasize some really key nutrients that are part of our body's long-term needs. Now, in the short run, we can get by without key nutrients for a while. Our body will borrow from here or borrow from there and try to fill in the gaps. But for the long run, when you're missing key nutrients, it doesn't matter whether you're on the ketogenic diet or not, you're going to pay a price for that. And so one of the goals that I have when I start patients on the ketogenic diet is to make sure that these holes are plugged, so to speak. But first of all, how to get started. In my experience, very few people easily transition from one day doing their usual diet and the next day they're on the ketogenic diet all the way. Now, some people can do that, but most people don't do that very well. So I recommend a strategy which works out a lot easier for most people. First of all, I transition to a low glycemic diet, which means that you're cutting out the foods that are rapidly turned to blood sugar. Second of all, I then move from 1 meal at a time, converting from low glycemic to ketogenic, so that breakfast becomes a ketogenic breakfast, and then lunch and supper are low glycemic, but still glucose-based. And they do that for a week. Then the next week, they add lunch as ketogenic, and then finally the next week, supper as ketogenic. And at that point, they're fully in a ketogenic diet. The question is, though, is how do you know when you're in this ketosis zone? Now, the vast majority of people that are considered experts or consider themselves experts on the ketogenic diet recommend blood testing for ketones as a way to make sure that you're in ketosis. If you can't measure ketones in your blood at sufficient levels, then you're not in ketosis. We don't recommend urine testing. It's not a very accurate way to know if you're in ketosis for a lot of reasons that I won't get into. But I also recommend, and I actually primarily recommend, a way to monitor your ketones that is not recommended by most so-called specialists, but in my opinion, it's a better way to go about it, and I'll explain why. And this is a monitor that's called the Ketonics Breath Analyzer. Now, what the Ketonics measures is acetone that is being basically off-gassed from our body's chemistry through the lungs, and the Ketonics measures this. Now, acetone is a ketone, but it's not used nutritionally for anything significant, but it reflects the amount of ketones in the body. The thing is, it doesn't reflect the main ketone that we're interested in, which is called beta-hydroxybutyrate. And that's what the blood tests measure, is beta-hydroxybutyrate. So they know in real time how much of that particular ketone is floating around in the bloodstream when they measure right at that time. But what the acetone level is measuring is indirectly where the beta-hydroxybutyrate was a few hours before. Now, the reason I like this is because once you've paid for the Ketonics, you've basically paid all you're going to pay. And when you do the blood testing, these strips run about $3 a piece to monitor your ketones. Now, some of the newer monitors are down to about $1 a piece. Maybe they're going to get a little bit less, but when people have to pay $1 to $3 every time they are checking their blood, if they don't have a lot of extra money laying around, that becomes a kind of a decision to not monitor very frequently. And that's what happens, is people don't monitor enough to know exactly what's going on. Whereas with the Ketonics, you can monitor yourself 100 times a day if you want to, and you won't wear it out. You can use it thousands of times. I've used mine thousands of times. It still gives very accurate readings. The question is whether you're doing the technique correctly. And once you learn how to do the technique correctly, it gives very accurate and very reproducible numbers. And you will know if you're in ketosis or not. At least you'll know where you were about 8 hours before. That's what it's going to reflect. But it gives you these trend lines that allows you to have a very accurate understanding of where you're at. So for people that don't want to invest in a blood monitoring device, where they're having to pay for each strip, or they don't like the idea of sticking themselves frequently to get this data, the Ketonics is a really good alternative. And as I said, once you've paid for it, it's paid for. It's spelled Ketonix. Very simple. You can go online, read about it, make your own decision. But if you're going to do the ketogenic diet, you must monitor yourself. A lot of people think that they're doing the ketogenic diet and they're never in ketosis. They might be close, but they're not in ketosis because they haven't pushed their body away from glucose-based metabolism, because they're either consuming too much protein or too many carbs. So the Ketonics or some other device will tell you whether you're where you're supposed to be or not. Now, finally, the program that we developed, which is called the Healthy Ketogenic Diet, is designed to teach you how to fill in the holes that are present nutritionally in most ketogenic programs that are out there. Now, a lot of people are well-meaning, but they don't understand all of the nutritional needs that the body has, and so they haven't talked about it sufficiently. And so in this program, I touch on 4 major key areas that people frequently don't address, or they don't address enough, in my opinion. And I also address a lot of other stuff relative to having a successful ketogenic diet experience, both getting started and staying on it for the long run, and feeling well because nutritionally you're doing well. So if you're interested in that program, just click on the link below this video and you can get it very easily. And it will help you to be successful in the ketogenic diet. And I can assure you that every program that I've looked at so far has some areas that I think are missing some key information. So this is, again, not a program about how to do the ketogenic diet with all the details. It's designed to fill in the holes, to fill in the blanks for people trying to do the ketogenic diet, and they are invariably missing some key nutrients. So either way, whether you decide to get it or not, I wish you well on the ketogenic diet. And I hope these 2 tips on how to get started and how to monitor will be helpful to you. God bless and have a great day.